Welcome back, Internet Trolls. It's time for this month's Janky Review. So called because I'm poor and I'm not a real critic. I'm your Janky critic, James Donahoe, and this month we are going to be talking about Man of Steel. One thing about this movie is it tends to be kind of a hot-button issue. It's very polarizing. People either love it, they hate it, or they're indifferent to it. Well, I guess that's the same with any movie. But especially with this one, it seems to be at the center of a lot of controversy. That being said, I would really like to reiterate that this is just my opinion on things. All I'm going to do is break down the movie, tell you what I saw, tell you what I thought. This is stuff that's good, this is stuff that's bad. And at the end, well, you can make up your own mind. Most likely you've made it up already, because this movie's been out for a couple of years now. But anyway, let's begin. Normally I would go out of my way to break down the plot of a movie, but this is a Superman origin film, so we pretty much know how it works. Doomed planet, desperate scientist, last hope, kindly couple, Superman. The long and short of the movie is Clark Kent going on a journey, and the trials, tribulations, and obstacles in his way to become the one true savior of Earth. One thing we definitely have to talk about is the messianic figures that go into the composition of Superman himself. Let's face it, you can't talk about Superman without referring to him as a messianic figure. He is a savior. That's what he is. That's what he was meant to be. That is how he was composed. The obvious references, especially in this movie, are Moses, Jesus Christ, Hercules, and Perseus. The Moses reference is probably the most obvious. He's sent in a basket, or in this case a spaceship, set amongst the reeds, in this case the ocean of space, and basically sent to his salvation. The Jesus Christ metaphor, especially in this movie, is a little more complicated. One thing you should notice is, about this room, you don't really see anything much in it, just a woman and a man giving birth to a child. You gotta remember, this is the beginning of this universe. It's all darkness, and inside all this darkness, there is one ray of hope, and that ray is being born. It is the savior of the universe, the earth, the planet, its people, however you want to say it. Now, one thing we learn in the plot of this movie is that there hasn't been a natural birth on Krypton in a very long time. As a matter of fact, it's been considered heresy. Now, this is very appropriate for the world-building aspect. They're a scientifically advanced society, and most people think that that's how a scientifically advanced society would function. One thing that stands out in this particular reference is that means these people don't have sex. So, in a way, very metaphorically, that means that Superman's mom was a virgin. Get it? Superman being born of a virgin. Now, granted, that does sound like a bit of a stretch, but I do think that that's what they were going for here. You may notice that when he's born, these animals on Krypton seem to react to it. Granted, they're alien life forms. You may notice that they have distinct qualities of farm animals. So, this is more reminiscent of the manger scene. I think also that the light shining above them could represent possibly the star that led the wise men to the manger. Although there's no wise men, so that's also a bit of a stretch for me. But that's just something I noticed. The Hercules metaphor is very, very noticeable. His most prominent feature is that he's super strong. And of course in this scene right here, aside from being shirtless, hello ladies, he has a gigantic beard on and he's working to save people on this oil rig. He looks distinctly like Hercules. I mean, this is historically, or mythologically, what Hercules was supposed to look like. Most people probably wouldn't even see the Perseus metaphor, but that's mostly because it's very prominent only in one scene, and that is Superman versus the World Engine. Notice he has to go to a foreign sea to defeat this thing. It has tentacles and claws, like a monster. Basically the sea monster, or the Kraken as it tends to be called sometimes because of Clash of the Titans. Superman can fly, which in the original myth, Perseus had sandals from Hermes, so that's that. Anyway, I think I've made my point pretty clear. However, putting all these different messianic figures together create the story of the most important messianic figure amongst, well, in this movie. Not amongst them, because, well, that's arguably Jesus Christ. But in this movie, the most important messianic figure is Superman, Kal-El, Clark Kent. In this movie, he goes on a very complex journey to find out who he is, what his purpose is, and in the end, we of course know his purpose is to be the savior of Earth. Superman has always been painted as not really a godlike being, although that is implicit, but as a savior. A being that we are meant to strive towards. He's better than any human, not just in power and stature, but in kindness and compassion. This is his journey towards that. Now, my one nitpick about this movie, I used to have several, but I boiled it all down to just one, is his dad's death scene. It's not so much his dad's death that bothers me. It's really just the dialogue following it. I don't have a problem believing in the scenario that Jonathan Kent would give his life to protect his son. I mean, if you've ever read an X-Men comic, you would understand this concept. But the dialogue that follows it, well, that could have been written just a tad better.
I let my father die because I trusted him. Because he was convinced that I had to win.
I let my father die because I trusted him. Well, like I said, I just can't get behind that line. It doesn't ruin the movie for me, though. It's just, whenever I hear it, I go, oh, and then I move on with my life. The truth is, this movie has several scenes that make me absolutely love it. I actually can't get enough of it. I've seen this movie several times, and not just for this review. All the scenes with Clark Kent and his mother, her giving him advice, him visiting her, helping her out, these are all great. They're simple scenes of how human he really is. The action scenes in this movie are really top-notch. You can see everything going on. These Kryptonians that come and ravage Earth are a viable threat. Sorry, I can't talk right today. And very rarely does the action actually let up. You barely get a chance to breathe until the end of the movie. That takes talent. But probably my favorite scene in this entire film, and I'm not alone in this, is when he first learns to fly. You can't help but smile during this scene. It's brilliantly done. Notice when he first takes off, he's not really flying, he's just hopping around. This is an homage to when the character was first conceived. He couldn't fly at first. He could just leap tall buildings in a single bound. Quickly, though, he does learn to fly, and the flying in this movie is downright majestic. The way that this is done, you fly with him. And that's the best part. Also, something I'm quite fond of is the sound effect for when he's flying. Listen closely. That's the old sound effect from the 1960s TV show, The Adventures of Superman, with George Reeves. Now, I've heard a lot of complaints about this movie, and I can understand people being apprehensive about it, but I would like to dispel a few of those if I may. People comment on how Lois really just uses a quick Google search to find out who Superman is. That's really not true. If you look at this, you realize that she doesn't use Google at all. She's a reporter with a lead. She's the only one that knows about his powers, and therefore follows the breadcrumbs back to the beginning. Nobody else is going to figure this out, especially since she doesn't really share the information with anybody. So it's not just a quick Google search, it's just good old-fashioned reporting based on a lead she got when she had a chance encounter with Kal-El, Clark Kent, Superman, or in this case, Joe. Another complaint that I've heard is that Superman doesn't actually save anyone in this movie. Well, that's really not true, seeing how he saves the world not just once, not just twice, but 3 times. Once from the World Engine, once from the threat of the Kryptonians, and once from the threat of General Zod. That's... good lord, how many people are on Earth? Multiply that by 3, that's a lot of saved people. Another complaint, and this is this is one that people, I feel, are justified in thinking, but just hear me out. Another complaint is the desaturation. It's not a very colorful movie. Superman is normally pretty colorful. Bright red cape, blue suit, everything. And in here it's, well, kind of dulled down. People are used to bright colors and things like that, mostly because of the superheroes and the Marvel movies. Marvel sets a very different tone. DC was going for something a little bit more harsh. And there's nothing wrong with that. The reason is, they're taking Superman and they're putting him in our world. It's not a world where, Tony Stark can survive heart surgery in a cave and puts on a bright colored suit and makes quips and charms it up. No, this is our world. And I don't know if you've noticed, but our world isn't exactly a bright, wonderful, colorful, happy-go-lucky place. It's bleak. But that's why putting Superman in this setting is so important. Superman is always a beacon of hope. Something to strive towards. This means that we too can strive towards this ideal that mankind should exempt. Not exempt. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. But you get what I'm saying. I'm pretty sure you guys can understand what I'm saying. Superman is a beacon of hope in this world of despair and heartlessness. That is why the desaturation exists, and that is why Superman is so important in this world. And last, and certainly not least, the killing of General Zod. Look, I've been reading Superman comics for a very long time. I understand. I get on board with the idea of Superman not killing people. I do understand this. I love Superman. It's a great character. And when I saw this movie for the first time and he killed Zod, yeah, I was taken aback by it. But here's the thing. When you really think about it, he doesn't just walk up to him, make a clever quip, and snap his neck. This is one of those tough choices. This is one of those things that's going to have consequences in the movie. It gives the movie depth. It gives the movie realism. Remember, when he has Zod in that grip, he doesn't just snap his neck. Listen carefully. He's begging Zod to stop. He's begging him. It's a last-ditch effort. And once he finally realizes that Zod will never stop until every human is dead, he makes the hardest choice he's ever had to make, and that is kill the last remaining member of his own race to save humanity, once again becoming the savior that we need. All in all, I really think this is a fantastic movie. It makes me feel for the characters. The score is amazing. Hans Zimmer, let's face it, hands down, is one of the best composers out there and creates a pretty definitive score for the movie. The cinematography is beautiful. The powers are great. The action is great. The acting is great. Henry Cavill does a marvelous job. Amy Adams is fantastic as a red-headed Lois Lane. Let's face it, everyone in this movie is great, even Perry White, but of course that's Lawrence Fishburne. I don't expect anything but excellence out of him. I can't find anything in this movie that ruins it for me. It does have its flaws, I will openly admit that. But overall, it's something that I love watching, and I'll continue to watch over and over again. I give the movie an A+. Thank you for sitting through this and listening to me drone on and on about how much I love this movie. Hopefully I've managed to instill a little bit of insight. If not, well, tell me how full of crap I am. Stay tuned for next month when I will be doing the very controversial Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. Stay tuned, and remember, if you can't be fancy, be janky. See ya.